I wanted to ask you a few
Some
questions
yeah.
about why did you decide to write about that subject?
The impulse or the compulsion to do it.
Another page in the monarchy's extensive repertoire of royal announcements. But when the royal disclosed that Prince Louis, the youngest son of Prince William and Princess Catherine, had been bestowed a rare, historic title previously reserved for older heirs, the reaction within royal walls was far from quiet. In fact, for one royal, it was the ultimate fracture in an already fraying sense of authority. Queen Camilla, once content to play the long game of public patience, eventually lost control. At first, the public rejoiced. The announcement portrayed Louis as a rising character in the royal family, adorable yet loyal, lively but profoundly anchored in tradition. The young prince had captured the hearts of millions during public appearances, and now it appeared that he was being formally positioned as a key member of the monarchy's next generation. But behind the scenes, the reaction was even more explosive. Camilla had lobbied for months, if not years, to promote her own family. While her children, Tom and Laura, have never held titles, she believed that her grandson, in particular, deserved a place in the public glare. Whispers had long whispered that she sought for ceremonial acknowledgement, possibly even a courtesy title bestowed by the king, but no one came. Then came this. Louis was catapulted forward and placed over Camilla's lineage in plain sight. The decision delivered a clear message that could not be ignored. In the silent chessboard of royal politics, William and Kate had just placed their youngest piece in a dominant position, effectively sidelining Camilla. According to insiders, she did not take the news calmly. The reaction was quick and explosive. Camilla was characterized by palace officials as visibly shaken and furious beyond words. Her wrath was not only about titles, it was about what they represented: power, proximity, and legacy. At that point, she realized hers was waning. To the globe, the announcement appeared benign, a beautiful gesture for a young prince settling into his job. But for those who knew the palace well, it was a proclamation. A new generation is emerging, one dedicated to Diana's memory, influenced by Kate's dignity, and led by William's unwavering will. In this new period, there will be no borrowed crowns. There's no shared spotlight, no more compromising. The monarchy had chosen its future. Camilla was no longer in the center. This is the story of how a term intended for a kid became the ultimate insult to a queen. From the time he was born, Prince Louis Arthur Charles was surrounded by anticipation and devotion. As the youngest child of Prince William and Princess Catherine, he was not initially regarded as a future leader. In the line of succession, he stood behind his brother George, the future king, and his sister Charlotte, the poised and already cherished spare. However, as time passed, things began to shift. Behind the palace gates, Louis developed into more than simply the mischievous third-born. Courtiers began to mutter that the youngster had an unshakable charm, a natural ease in the spotlight, intense loyalty to his brothers, and perhaps most importantly, the sparkle of Diana's personality wrapped in his mother's discipline. While George frequently carried the weight of expectation and Charlotte perfected public elegance, Louis delivered something raw and uncommon: sincerity. It was evident in his fun antics on the Buckingham Palace balcony, his uninhibited laughter during Jubilee events, and his protectiveness of Charlotte on family outings. Unlike many royal children, Louis appeared genuine, and it, in a period when the monarchy struggles to remain approachable, was a subtle weapon. So when the title was announced, reactivating a historic honorific last held by a senior royal in the 19th century, many insiders were unsurprised. What about the others? They were stunned. The title given to Louis was not purely symbolic. It was once associated with military prestige, regional influence, and royal status. Assigning it to a child still in primary school represented strategic positioning, a slight but significant shift in the royal hierarchy. According to palace aides, the decision was not made hastily. It had been months in the works, championed quietly by William and Kate, who had been pressing for explicit recognition of their children's roles as the monarchy entered a new era. The couple believed in preparing their children for service rather than performance. Louis's rising public grace made him the ideal candidate to bear the load of tradition, with a childlike lightness. However, the action was not universally applauded. Camilla reportedly had other plans. While she was never given the authority to confer titles herself, she had long hoped Charles would modernize the family tree by incorporating her descendants in ceremonial roles. Her grandson, a child with no claim to royal blood, was said to have been raised with polite encouragement that he too was part of the family. Camilla had subtly positioned him at events, seating him near senior royals, putting him in the path of photographers, and nurturing hopes that he might someday carry a small title, a ribbon, or a medal, something to signal belonging. But Louis's promotion dashed those hopes totally. According to a former courtier, Camilla believed that a common stage could be created, that just as Diana's children were honored, her own family may also have royal status. The Louis title shattered the idea. For Kate and William, the decision was not about Camilla at all. It was about Louis, about ensuring that Diana's bloodline remained central, unaffected by blended family politics or second-hand claims to power. William, still troubled by how his mother was treated, has made it clear over the years that there will be no doubt about whose legacy his children carry. As a result, the news was made quietly but deliberately. A simple line from the court circular, a single post on the royals' official social media accounts. There is no press conference, no ceremony, just one discreet proclamation that Prince Louis had assumed a title that had previously belonged to a pillar of royal tradition. The media went wild. Commentators hypothesized about the title's significance for the royal family's future. However, in the palace, the meaning was already clear. Louis had been picked, not due to seniority, not because of duty. However, in this new period of the monarchy, he represents the royal family that the public wishes to believe in, innocent, dignified, and free of scandal. Camilla, watching from the sidelines, has never heard a more deafening quiet. Queen Camilla has always known how to wait. For decades, she stood in the wings, enduring public hostility, royal disfavor, and the lingering memory of Diana. She endured gossip, headlines, and family drama for legitimacy, waiting for the crown to land on her husband's head and then her own. While the public gradually warmed to Camilla in her capacity as consort, there was always a silent war behind palace doors that Camilla never ceased fighting. And at the center of it all was one question: what about her family? Camilla may have married into royalty, but her children and grandkids have not. Tom Parker Bowles and Laura Lopes were always regarded as private citizens, even if their stepbrothers, William and Harry, stood beneath the bright lights of the monarchy. Camilla had been softly lobbying for inclusion for years. Nothing too extravagant, simply the odd royal invitation, a mention in the court circular, or a visible seat at royal occasions for her grandkids. Small indicators of acknowledgement, subtle evidence that her bloodline was important too. But the palace never bowed. And as years passed, the contrast between the two families became even more pronounced. Camilla's children were treated as polite afterthoughts, whilst Kate's were cherished by the public and highlighted in glowing newspapers. Prince George's birthday photos made international headlines. Princess Charlotte's educational choices made front-page news. Even Prince Louis, formerly considered a minor character, had become a public favorite. Meanwhile, Camilla's grandchildren remained invisible, with no titles, spotlight, or place in the royal hierarchy, and it stung. According to a former royal assistant, Camilla once said, "It's as if my family does not exist." Another insider stated that Camilla had, on more than one occasion, quietly encouraged King Charles to modernize the monarchy by bestowing a ceremonial honor on her grandson. Nothing dynastic, but symbolic, a symbol of oneness. But William apparently turned it off every time. The heir to the kingdom, who was still extremely protective of his mother's history, viewed any move to promote Camilla's relatives as a dilution of Diana's bloodline. For William, the monarchy was not a joint family endeavor. It was about lineage, history, responsibility, and titles were not to be given out as favors. Camilla attempted to disguise her disappointment in public. However, many close to her believe the animosity has simmered. Behind the scenes, she became increasingly bitter, particularly towards Kate. What was once a friendly friendship between two royal women had devolved into distant formality. Camilla couldn't help but notice how Kate's grace, calm, and restraint had won over both the institution and the public without even asking for it. And when Prince Louis received his new title, it seemed like the ultimate slap. The youngest Welsh child, still in elementary school and years away from actual royal duties, was being raised to a place of historical veneration. Camilla's grandson, who is rarely addressed at state functions, was once again omitted. The royal pecking order was no longer simply unspoken, it had been etched in stone. According to friends, Camilla went silent for several days. She canceled lunch with close society friends and was especially rude to staff. She smiled for the cameras, of course. Decades of practice made it easy, but something inside changed. The resentment was not simply growing, it had blossomed into wrath. While the audience celebrated young Louis's delightful new title, Queen Camilla began plotting behind closed doors, not simply to be heard, but to be seen. Because in her mind, this was about more than just honor. It was about surviving in a family that had never fully welcomed her. The rage did not come all at once. Camilla kept her mask on for a few days following the title announcement, smiling tight-lipped during a charity event, laughing softly at a garden party, and maintaining her normal queenly grace. But underneath the pearls and gloss, something was unraveling, and when the dam finally broke, it did so with such force that royal servants were astonished and awestruck. According to insiders, it happened the morning after a tabloid published a glowing front-page story, Prince Louis, the crown's new darling. The article praised his natural charm and noted how the royal family had rewarded the young prince with a title of deep historical weight. But it was the closing sentence that cut the deepest. The gesture is a clear sign that the future of the monarchy rests squarely with the Wales family, Diana's bloodline. Camilla read it during breakfast. That's when everything snapped. One staffer, commenting on the condition of anonymity, described the situation as absolutely volcanic. Plates were shoved aside, a silver teapot shattered on the floor, and Camilla reportedly shouted loud enough for personnel down the hallway to hear. "How can they humiliate me like this? My grandchild is just as deserving, if not more so, than Diana's murderous ghost, which haunts everything." It was harsh and vicious, and some individuals claimed it was her most emotional outburst in years. She stormed into Clarence's house and demanded an immediate meeting with Charles. Camilla accused William and Kate of orchestrating a silent coup, systematically pushing her and her family further into the margins while propping up Diana's children as the only royal future that mattered. When she found him in his private study, launching into what one observer described as a tirade of fury, pain, and betrayal. "They've made a mockery of me," she allegedly snapped, "of us, of everything I've labored for." Charles, ever the diplomat, attempted to soothe her. He gently reminded her that titles come with history and decisions are made with the crown's long-term vision in mind. But it did not help. Camilla, who had already felt isolated since her crowning glow faded, perceived this as the ultimate betrayal, not only from William, but also from the king himself. In her opinion, it was no longer about Louis or etiquette. It was about respect. She believed that respect had been systematically taken away from her. She paced, yelled, and finally broke down, something she hadn't done in front of Charles since the beginning of their marriage. Her normally controlled visage quiver with intense emotion. "They've erased my family," she allegedly murmured, "and you just let them." The king did not answer. Later that day, Camilla canceled 2 appearances. Officially, she was resting. However, the palace was on high alert internally. Staff personnel were told to give her room, and only her closest advisors were allowed near her. One longtime aide admitted, "This wasn't just a poor mood, this was something deeper." She seemed to realize she had lost, because for Camilla, this was more than simply a title dispute. It confirmed what she'd suspected all along, that she'd never be more than an outsider in Diana's country. Regardless of the crown on her head, the public, and increasingly the institution, had already picked their Queen of Hearts, and now they were selecting her grandkids. Naturally, the meltdown was kept quiet. The royal machine ensured that no photograph or official word made it into the press. However, within the palace walls, the message had already echoed loudly. Camilla was finished smiling, and she was prepared to battle. Camilla raged behind closed doors, while Catherine, Princess of Wales, stayed calm. There were no public statements, no snarky remarks. There is no evident gloating. But make no mistake, this was no accident. Prince Louis's title, while presented as a formal royal decree, bore all the silent hallmarks of a meticulously organized maneuver by Kate, one that indicated her growing influence inside the palace without saying a word. For years, royal watchers underestimated Kate's strategic abilities. She was portrayed as the perfect wife, smiling duchess, and woman who never rocked the boat. But behind the scenes, Kate was honing the art of royal power, not via conflict, but through precision, timing, and perseverance. It began months before. Following the Queen's death and King Charles' coronation, there was a minor power vacuum. Camilla came forward, striving to shape the monarchy in her image, including her family in formal ceremonies, and advocating for expanded ceremonial duties. It was a subtle campaign, but Kate noticed. Camilla was rewriting the narrative, transitioning from step-grandmother to matriarch, from outsider to equal player. The transition from consort to co-architect of the royal future poses a significant challenge. Kate, ever observant, decided not to address her directly. She did not argue. She did not exclude Camilla's grandchildren from gatherings. She merely waited. Then came the moment. Prince Louis, who had hitherto been overshadowed by George's earnestness or Charlotte's grace, had begun to emerge. His magnetism enchanted the nation. His cheeky jubilee faces, impromptu waves during royal trips, and obvious closeness to Kate all made him popular with the British public. Kate saw that this was more than just adorable. It was strategic. So, when it was time to assign the next ceremonial title, she nudged. Not too loud, not publicly. However, experts confirm she gently advocated behind palace walls, chatting with William, aides, and even softly recommending to the king that Louis be recognized. The move worked. Charles, seeking to maintain a feeling of continuity and legitimacy, agreed. William supported it enthusiastically, so the announcement was made. Kate did not celebrate. Instead, she showed up at a charity function the next day in a muted green coat dress, smiling cordially and clutching Louis's hand as if nothing had happened. But everything did, because with this single act, Kate had reasserted the power of her bloodline and Diana's legacy without ever raising a finger in public. While Camilla shouted behind golden doors, Kate just marched forward with her son to the quiet adoration of a nation. Those close to her believe she sees this as more than a personal achievement. Kate believes this is about the monarchy's credibility. It is about guaranteeing that the crown's future belongs to people who are born into service rather than married into it, not purchased with influence. However, duty, compassion, and honor have been instilled in me since my early childhood. She's playing the long game, explained one senior courtier, and she's winning. Camilla may have worn the crown. What about Kate? Kate had claimed the people's loyalty, and now the institutions as well. And when she stood by Prince Louis, carefully guiding him through public life, it became evident that Kate wasn't just the Princess of Wales. She was the monarchy's most deadly force, quiet, adored, and always 10 steps ahead. For King Charles, the throne had always represented a legacy of duty, tradition, and balance. But what he hadn't anticipated was how soon that throne would become a battleground, and how frequently he'd find himself caught in the crossfire, not between nations, but between two women, his wife and his daughter-in-law. The title bestowed upon Prince Louis, which should have been a source of pride for the family, instead revealed a deep personal fissure at the heart of the monarchy. According to palace sources, Charles was aware of the repercussions when he granted Louis's ascension. He'd noticed the developing schism between Camilla and Kate. He knew Camilla was concerned about her family being excluded, particularly her grandson. However, he recognized the optics, the necessity of securing the public image of the next generation. William and Kate embodied the monarchy's future. Their children were born with that destiny, and with public trust in the institution dwindling over time, it was critical to maintain the attention on the successors whom the people cherished. Louis was simply the next natural figure in line. Nonetheless, Charles had hesitated. In conversations with his advisors, he allegedly asked if the decision might be postponed or softened, perhaps as a symbolic gesture rather than an official title. But William had made it clear that his family would not be ignored, even as Camilla's youngsters moved closer to the spotlight at royal functions. Charles understood that pushing back could lead to a larger schism with his son, something he couldn't afford, not now. So he authorized it, silently, formally. Camilla then burst. According to those close to the king, the aftermath of the title announcement was one of their marriage's most emotionally fraught times. Camilla, who was already feeling alienated, regarded this as a complete humiliation, and she did not hold back. She accused Charles of infidelity, always choosing Diana's children over hers and letting Kate win again. The king, known for his calm demeanor, attempted to reason with her. However, Camilla was not interested in logic. She sought loyalty, recognition, control. When she didn't get it, she withdrew emotionally, locking herself away in her own quarters for nearly a day. Privately, Charles confided in advisors that he was tired of being forced to pick sides. For decades, he had attempted to heal the gap between Camilla and the rest of the family. He believed that time, titles, and shared tasks would alleviate the difficulties. Instead, the crown had only intensified them. He was now caught between two opposing forces that would not back down. On one side was Camilla, the woman who stood by him through scandal and had waited decades for a seat at the table. On the other was Catherine, whom the public recognized as the next genuine queen, the personification of grace, responsibility, and Diana's undying spirit. And Charles? He was left to hold together a monarchy that resembled a broken family estate rather than a unified country. According to advisors, the king has become more quiet after the incident. He has taken less engagements. He frequently discusses legacy, but less about vision. Some believe the strain is weighing on him, aging him faster than the crown ever could. Because deep inside, Charles knows he may be king, but when the palace splits in two, the throne remains stationary. It just shudders. It was only one title, a ceremonial honor awarded on a cheery young child who was barely old enough to appreciate its significance. But within the golden gates of Buckingham Palace, it sparked a reckoning. Prince Louis's promotion was more than just an homage to royal tradition. It was a seismic signal, a declaration that the monarchy's destiny belonged only to Diana's family. It informed the public, the press, and, most crucially, the palace itself, that the Wales family's legacy was not simply surviving, it was prospering, and those outside that legacy, however close to the crown, would not inherit what was not theirs. For Queen Camilla, the letter struck like a dagger. Despite the crown on her head and decades of navigating royal minefields, she had never been able to bring her own family into the royal fold. And now, with one simple decision, Kate had ensured a legacy for not only her eldest child, but also her youngest. Behind the scenes, everything changed. Camilla's outburst uncovered scars that had been festering behind her public persona. Her faith in Charles eroded. Her simmering tension with Kate burst into something colder, sharper. The palace had once again become a chessboard of silent maneuvers, polite smiles, and well-timed appearances. However, in the court of public opinion, the verdict had already been delivered. Kate had won without raising a finger, and Prince Louis, innocent and wide-eyed, now bore a title that, whether he realized it or not, secured his position in royal history, not simply as the king's grandson, but as a living symbol of the monarchy's future. A future characterized not by ancient grudges, nor by blurred boundaries of power, but by the heirs whom the public trusts, loves, and rallies around. During that move, a new line was drawn. Not only are there distinctions between titles and bloodlines, but also between the past and the future. The crown is moving forwards. And Camilla? She's left watching from the sidelines, still wearing the crown, but no longer wielding power.